Yep.
Hey, we should explain to people that we haven't fixed all the podcast issues yet, and because I keep getting questions.
Yeah, it really comes down to what app are you using? Because if you use
Yeah,
the iOS app or whatever, iTunes or whatever they call it today, it's fine. If you use anything that's linked to the Google podcast feeds, that is fine.
yep,
Spotify is not fine, and potentially Pocket Cast, it may not be
okay,
working. So,
yep. So we're trying to fix it.
yep,
It's just, it's kind of a. This is tied to me taking over the company last year, and
there's a lot of
there,
accounts.
yeah, and it's like vestiges of the
Hmm.
old company, and it's kind of, and people have come and gone, and unfortunately, some of the accounts that were set up were for people we can't even reach anymore, and so I reached out to George yesterday,
Yep.
and to try to figure some of this out. But some of the like I think the Spotify one is, I don't even know if that account, it's an account at the old company that might not even exist anymore as an account. I mean, it's just, anyway.
It'll get there. The
We thought,
alternative for anybody listening to this and saying, "Oh, it's not working on my thing," if
right.
on at least on Throts.com,
Mhm.
underneath the video, there's a button that says "Subscribe to the podcast." The new
Are
direct
there?
links, I
Yeah.
should say, are there. So
Yep.
you could always drop those into whatever app you're using, and it will
Hmm.
work that way
Yeah,
too.
because it's an RSS feed basically, right? Like a,
Yeah, it's I think technically .xml whatever, but
yeah,
it's what everything uses. So yeah,
yeah. Anyway, I we thought this was kind of done, but it's not, and it's complicated.
yeah, is it?
Yeah.
It actually is.
Actually, I mean, well, it's simple and complicated. It's a simple problem, difficult to fix, I guess.
Yeah, on the I don't know whatever side of life you live on or whatever.
Mhm.
Windows 11 might be looks like they're going to start putting more recommended apps in your start menu now in the recommended section, not just in the app section. Because
You know what we need, Brad, is a alternative start menu that doesn't do this bullshit to
yeah,
us.
I tend
Can you?
to agree.
Um, yeah,
Yeah,
something. I don't know.
yeah, somebody should do that.
Yeah, it's an idea. It might be a good product. I don't know. Just
Yeah,
throwing a random idea out in the
I think
world,
it's
I
a good
guess.
idea. Maybe we'll try that at startup. Anyway, so if you see more ads or recommendations, looks like it's coming in the next update. So
Yeah.
and there's not much you could do about it. Like that's the it's even
Yeah.
worse on Windows 10. They're not putting a full screen takeover that says upgrade to Windows 11.
Yeah, I miss those. The full screen takeovers.
Yeah, I wonder, is there a dollar amount
Mhm.
that would make sense for my? See, the problem is they can't advertise this. There's no way. So like let's say the dollar amount was $35 per year or something like
Yep.
that, and you could remove the ads from Windows.
Yep. I would broaden that a bit to remove all the things that are terrible in Windows, right?
Yeah.
If you could disable telemetry tracking 100%, although I don't personally think that's a big deal. If you could get rid of all the bundled crap, we're in the start menu. If
Mm.
you could get rid of all of the advertising, like you said, suggestions, whatever. If you could, I don't know, maybe use your own browser when you click on a link in widgets or in search or in help or whatever, right? Stuff like that. I To me, the need for this is obvious and inoffensive, and they do this with ad-free Outlook, right? Which is something you can kind of, I think you can still buy as its own thing, if I'm not mistaken, or if
Yeah.
not, Microsoft 365 Basic. That's no money, not much money. I mean, that will do it too. I
But so the problem with this is Microsoft's going to come out and say, "Hey, you don't like those things we're putting in your start menu? We got a solution for you. Give us $35 a year and or
Yep.
whatever the number is, and we'll stop doing it." Like that feels
Right.
like ransom.
Look, I'm not good at marketing, so I can't. I'm not the one who can come up with that. But I think of this as the DMA Plus pack for Windows 11. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
I
question that we don't know though, the problem here is how much do they actually make from this? Because what if it's more than $35 per user? That would be a lot of money.
can't be. It can't be.
Yeah.
And that's the other part of this. That's one of the reasons it's obvious and inoffensive is we already have. I at Thurrott.com know this from my own financial picture, as tiny and sad as it is, or we know from Spotify that offers both paid and unpaid. Right.
Mm-hmm.
They have far more users on ad-supported versions of that product, and they make far more money from the minority of customers who pay for it.
Yeah,
It's not
that's
even
true.
close. Like it's, the per user amount, whatever. So these little black, what are dark patterns or nudges or whatever you want to describe these things that are in Windows, like how effective are they? And then what is the financial benefit to Microsoft? I think minuscule. It has to be. So you overcharge me for it. That's fine. I just want to pay and not have it. I tried when I don't know if we talked about it, but I tried Windows 11 Enterprise over the
Yeah, yeah.
weekend, and that does not solve the problem as it turns out. But um, and it's not really available at retail in a normal sense. So if you think about like Windows 11 Pro costing $200, I think it is, and the upgrade is probably 100 or something,
Mm-hmm.
whatever the numbers are. That would be expensive as a product, to buy. So even if it solved the problem, it's not really viable to consumers. But God, come on, there's got to be a way. How many workarounds? What
Yeah.
kind of a game do we have to play? And you install these utilities that do different things, and Microsoft works to undercut them, and and it just escalates, or maybe you just do the right thing, Microsoft. But yeah, marketing it, that's a question, but
Yeah,
that,
it's a weird one too, because then obviously they have to build in support into Windows to be able to unwind all this stuff. So that has an inherent ongoing cost.
but they just did it for the EU. That's kind of my point. I
Oh yeah,
mean,
that's
I, just let me enable it here. I mean, just it's flipping a switch literally in the registry. I mean, or just make it like that everywhere. I just, like
yeah.
that would be the easiest thing. They've already created a complexity for themselves. Just even like Windows SKUs, having home and pro workstation and education and enterprise, blah 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 blah. Just have just Windows. Like what? Why? I don't know. I hate the way the world is. It really bothers me.
Yeah, so they've got that going for them. I don't expect them to do that. I really don't.
No, I
Because
don't either. That's
it's
the problem, right?
it's too messy, and
Yep.
and also I think part of it probably comes down to Microsoft has no problem shooting their own foot, but they've come out and said for so long like these aren't really ads, they're whatevers, and then
I'm sorry, but I'm not. I have individuals who try to argue that to me. Let's argue the semantics. Let's instead just agree that we should have the choice,
mhm.
and the choice is, I don't know. God, this is too big of a topic for this morning, but it, it, it we all have products that sync settings to other, so if you have a browser, for example, you use Chrome, it does whatever. It's always very interesting to me what doesn't sync, right?
Yeah.
And I notice this more because I install things more than most people. So I'm kind of like the canary in this particular coal mine. So for example, Google just introduced the beginning of what is the end of cookies. It's a new
Mhm.
way to track people without using cookies, right? Oh, I'm sorry. They don't put it that way. They market it like it's some huge user benefit that respects your privacy. It's not. But when you set up Chrome for the first time, there are 3 new options that you'll eventually be that it will eventually mention to you. It will not sync your choices because doing so lessens the ways that they can track you and watch your online activities. They try to make it look like they're doing something good for you. They're doing something good for advertisers. And I think that's very telling, right? Same thing if you use Microsoft Edge, a lot of settings like that. If you use Windows, same thing. If you go into Windows and say, I don't want these suggestions, and you can turn some of that off in settings. and then you install Windows again or reset it, that it doesn't remember that, and they do that on purpose, you know. And to me, like that's one of the tells of bad behavior, right?
Hmm.
If it was really about you and your choices and respecting you as a customer who pays them for this thing, um, respect those settings configurations. It doesn't. Or OneDrive, which just enables folder backup after you've said no a million times. It's like, we're done asking you, we're just doing it. Like, well, seriously? That's how malware behaves. Like, it's just bad behavior.
I'm going to read you
I
this
feel it. I
the
don't
most beautiful headline on Tech
know.
Meme that I've read and seen in a long time,
Okay.
because you can see that they tried really hard to make this a compliment sandwich, like they were really trying to follow that model. So have
I
you
like it.
seen this humane AI pin thing? It's like a little
Hmm.
thing that basically puts ChatGPT right here.
Right.
I love this.
Next to your heart where you need it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well made, photos look good and easier to access than a phone, but doesn't work half the time, really slow and missing basic features. Like
Oh,
it's like,
sorry. Was that about Windows 11 or about something else?
when that's
Oh boy.
yeah.
Yep.
Yep. I mean, I think everyone saw this coming and said this should be an app, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Yep. I
Anyways,
needed another way to do something I can do somewhere else. Yeah. Thanks.
yeah. Well, we've made a living. I tried the art
That's
browser,
well.
by the way. That you.
There was a friend of mine from Microsoft who, at the time, described the Apple TV as, "Oh, good, yet another way to watch TV on my TV."
I mean,
Nice. Yeah.
at the time, yeah.
Yep.
Where the industry has gone, it's worked out fairly well for them.
Fair enough. But I mean, this was 10, 15 years. I don't know, a long time ago. I just thought it was a very concise and
Hmm.
funny way to put that. But
I did get that art browser to work finally that you sent over. So
oh,
that
good. Yeah.
I.
Right. So here's the thing. So I wrote I wrote an article yesterday about
Hmm.
kind of the fundamental, almost philosophical differences between the Mac and Windows. These things that at a high level are obviously exactly the same, you know, and there's a lot that goes into that. And a lot of it is tied to the history and culture and whatever these companies and all that stuff, the way these things have evolved over time, blah, blah, whatever. Anyway, um, but the Arc browser is a great example of an app that would only have been made on the Mac, right? Would be made by people who are Mac people and is informed by that kind of philosophy and the way things work on that product. And then they port it to Windows, and
Hmm.
it's functionally incomplete. That's part of the problem.
Yeah.
But it also just doesn't map as well.
Right.
And I use a product called AI Writer, which is no, I'm sorry, it's not. It's called IA Writer.
Yeah.
Um,
Slight difference.
right. Yeah. There's no AI in it. It's anyway.
Yeah. No, it's an
It's just
older app. It's a great writing tool.
yep. It's a markdown editor.
Yep.
It's a plain text. It writes some plain text. That's all it does. And it's expensive. It was made on the Mac. And it's obviously made on the Mac. It's a lot of these kinds of apps are very obviously Mac apps, and it's been ported to Windows. And the Windows version it's fine. It's not quite the same. It's the quick burger of apps, and
Hmm.
and so is Arc. And what I mean by that is, one time we went to France, and that we with the family, and we were in a mall or something, and there was a fast food restaurant called Quick Burger, and we're like, oh, let's grab a like a familiar food, right?
Yeah.
And everything was wrong. Like, it was from the outside looking in the store, you're like, this is McDonald's. And then the more you looked at what we got, you were like, what is this thing?
Hmm.
And the way I described it was like some guy from France went to the United States, ate at McDonald's one day, and said, oh my God, I have to duplicate this in France. People here are going to love this. And we're going to have this completely authentic fast food experience. But he didn't take any pictures, didn't take any notes. He just worked off his memory, and everything was wrong. you know so now when things are off like this, I refer to them as the quick burger of whatever that thing is. And so Arc browser is the quick burger of
Yeah.
web browsers, and IA Writer is the quick burger of markdown editors. It makes sense on the Mac, you know but it feels, you know so yeah, if you had a Mac and you used it, you might be like, oh my God, this changes everything. And on Windows, it's like, this is weird.
Yeah. Like
you know
it's.
yeah.
I get it. I get what they're trying to do, and I look forward to seeing how they continue to evolve it.
Hmm.
It it's too different for my workflow to
it's
change right now.
it requires a lot of work to get used to it, and and I think you're one of them. There are people who make that leap and are like, I don't know how I ever live without this, and I can
Hmm.
never change again. But you're right; the barrier to entry is too high, and that's part of the problem. But it also speaks to the problem with web browsers is that they're all the same, right?
Right.
So people feel very strongly about, like, I feel very strongly about Brave, maybe, or they'll find some guy who loves Vivaldi or
Hmm.
Firefox or whatever, Edge, Chrome. They were huge fans of these products, but fundamentally, from a user experience standpoint, they're identical. Like, you know what I mean? Just like Windows and the Mac are fundamentally, like, at a high level. But so they really thought about the browser and how important it is to us, and how this is the center of everything we do, which it is for a lot of people.
Hmm.
And like Windows Phone, like, rethought, you know, how this thing could work. And Windows Phone, to the people who love that product, were like, yes, like, oh my God, this makes sense, you know. But I think for a lot of people too, Windows Phone was like, oh, it's a little weird, you know, it's a little different. And the Arc browser isn't a little different.
It's a lot. You know what? I
It's a
hope
lot.
they continue to push forward, and I'll be curious
I
to
do
see
too.
how they change up the landscape, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. It might be like ARM on Windows, you know, if all it does is influence
Hmm.
the dominant player to be better, then that's not a bad outcome either. Of course, that doesn't work too well for us, but, you know, theoretically.